really sorry for the technical issues. So welcome to International House Amman on Duha, and let's get started. So all ESL teachers teach writing, and we all choose to teach things that we believe that are practical to teach and useful for students. So we teach them how to write articles, letters, emails, or essays. But we forget about another important aspect when we teach or learn writing in a foreign language, which is to improve students' creativity, improve students' brainstorming and critical thinking skills, stimulating their imagination and helping them to express ideas creatively in writing. And all of that can be actually taught in creative writing, which we sometimes choose to ignore and neglect because it's honestly really hard to teach. So today I have an idea. To help you teach creative writing. So let me get started by a small personal story. So this is my grandmother, and she used to tell me a lot of fairy tales and stories when I used to be little. My grandmother here, her stories were amazing. They were really engaging, really interesting, and I loved each and every one of them. I felt that my grandmother was the best storyteller. Her stories were the greatest. So when I grew up, I discovered that her stories were not that original after all. They were actually different adaptations of universal fairy tales. So can you still hear me? Because I'm seeing some comments on the comment section about the connection. So can you still hear me? Yeah? Okay, perfect. So, as I told you, I discovered that my grandmother's fairy tales were actually different adaptations of universal fairy tales, and she actually modified them to suit my community, my society, and so I can relate to them a little bit more. And I started thinking now, why won't we give students the same opportunity, the chance to change stories or fairy tales into their own stories? And this is what I'm going to present today. So, let's get started. Maybe after a lead-in where you can talk to your students about their favorite childhood fairy tales and stories, we can start with, yeah. So can you hear me now? Is it better now? So, maybe we can start the first stage, which is the cultural awareness stage. I believe that this stage is very important in our lesson here, especially if you want to help your students notice the cultural differences that they might not be able to notice in the original fairy tale. And it's really important when you have a multicultural classroom. So at the beginning of the class, you can give your students some cards with some cultural details. So as you can see here in the slide, traditional food, traditional wear, relationships, men and women, taboos, and they can discuss these differences, and it would be more of a cultural exchange stage. Then we move to the next stage where students have to actually deal with the original fairy tale. They have to transform and modify. Let's take Snow White as an example for our presentation today. So in this stage, which is building the protagonist profile, first show your students a picture of the original protagonist. As you can see here, we have Snow White. Then you can give them a group or a set of cards that contain different characteristics and details about the protagonist. Each characteristic students have to discuss in groups and change each characteristic to suit their protagonist or their story. So for example, here we have Snow White. She has short hair. We prefer long hair, so they would change that into long hair. Snow White has fair skin. We're more of olive to tan, so they would change that as well and write it down in the worksheet, the profile worksheet that I would show you in a minute. Next, we would go to another set of cards where students have to change some elements in, and they are the key elements of the story. So here you can give your students the key element of the story, demonstrate the first element with them, so So you can help them get the hang of it. You can help them be more creative and maybe funny when changing these key elements. So for example, our students here changed the poisoned apple in Snow White to a plate of Diwali, which is something we can never say no to as Jordanians. So it would make more sense to us. After finishing with the key elements and the characteristics, students would write them all down in the profile worksheet. As you can see here, we have the complete profile worksheet where students chose to change the protagonist's name into Samran instead of Snow White, and which actually means the exact opposite of Snow White. And then they chose, they chose Oral Faris, who is a presenter and announcer, a Jordanian presenter and announcer, as the face of the protagonist, and they chose her an outfit, and they completed the profile as you can see here in the picture with all the details. Okay, now let's move into the language analysis stage. First of all, maybe you'd like to start with giving students cards that include parts of the original fairy tale and using the original script, the original language, and ask the students to place them on the plot diagram. Now, the plot diagram has to be introduced beforehand to students. After a brief feedback stage, you can start focusing and highlighting the target language using the same card. So, for example, you can highlight the narrative senses. You can highlight linking words, register, maybe to show them tell techniques, and for funnier stories, you can focus on puns and sarcasm. After highlighting the target language, just give them a brief controlled practice just to make sure that your students understood the target language. Now, the magic begins here. Students would start transforming the story from the original script to their own version of the story. So as you can see here, students had the choice to control the plot, the actions. They changed everything, and then they changed the linking words, even the register. They felt that they wanted to have a less formal, less poetic language. And as you can see in this slide, they changed the iconic narrative in Snow White. So they changed the iconic narrative from Snow White into gossiping scene in between neighbors, and this is something that you would see in Jordan. You would see the neighbors, the housewives chatting while having their coffee in the morning and talking about who's pregnant, who's getting married, who's hiding a secret, and at the end in our story, who's the most beautiful girl in town. So after transforming all the details in the cards, they can just combine them together and they would have a new version of Snow White, which is one that they can actually relate to and one that they actually wrote creatively. What I really like about this idea is that it's really flexible. So you can either present it in a 1-2-hour class, or you can extend it into a whole unit where you can focus on many other things. So for example, you can focus on pronunciation and intonation, which would lead to storytelling. So each group would retell the story in front of the whole class. Or you can teach your students how to transform the story that they already wrote into a script and a dialogue for a play, and they can act this play out in a school event or as an end-of-course project. So it can be so much fun, and you can record this play and use it in future classes. So this is a very simple idea. It's really easy to apply, and the students loved it. They felt that they wrote a new story from scratch. It was funny, it was really creative, and definitely the idea promotes creativity and imagination in creative writing. So So I hope that you found something useful in today's talk. I'm not really sure if I have time for the 10 minutes because I lost track of time while taking the microphone. So maybe Sean can tell me if you have time for any questions, any comments, or any other
Well, we're going into a break
details.
now, so if there are any questions, you can answer them in the chat box. But well done for getting through your talk